If you are single and tired of trying to navigate these dating streets, then be sure to tune into the Business of Dating live series and podcast, where yours truly, Tamika Michelle Johnson, aka the Matchmaking Attorney, will be joined by guests as we talk about how to date the right way as a successful professional in the 21st century. Join us live on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. on Facebook or YouTube, or catch the replay. And to reach us, simply visit thematchmakingattorney.com. See you soon.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Business of Dating show. It is Wednesday, 8 p.m. shortly. We're going to have a really good show tonight. I am your host. You know me by now, Tamika Michelle Johnson, which I am the owner of Platinum Connections, which is a matchmaking agency for successful professionals. If you are tired and frustrated of dating out here in these streets, just random people, and are looking for a more quality, better dating experience, be sure to check us out at myplatinumconnections.com, which is on the bottom of the screen. Schedule a consultation to get more information about our services and all that good stuff. Also, if you are tuning in, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can get the replays and notifications of our future shows. Would love the support. So we have a couple of guests coming on. We've got one that's coming on just a little bit late, but we have Marvin Wayne, who was with us our first show. And so I want to talk about a little bit how we even came to this subject. And one, also, if you're on YouTube, also on Facebook, if you want to join us live on camera, before I do that, there is a link at the bottom of those pages where you can join us on screen. I will see you in the studio and let you in for your comments on this subject. You can also just type in your comments as well, and I will read those as well. So, how we got here to the subject of why so many couples are having sex less when they're in long-term relationships and or marriage. A few weeks ago, Marvin and I were speaking, and he mentioned that, listen, this is two things that men want. That's sex and that's peace. That's it. I'm like, that's it? That's all? Those two things. You remember that conversation, Mr. Wayne?
Well, peace and intimacy, to be exact. That's exactly how I am.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we're very simple in that way.
Yeah. And I thought that was very, very simple because it's a little bit more complex than that. But I can't speak on it from a man's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I always want to give that platform for men to speak that. Now, no doubt, there is a common complaint amongst men that they feel like they don't have sex enough in their relationships or marriages. I've heard it since I was very, very young, way before I got married, when I was in a relationship, probably even in my 20s. I've heard it. So, we can't deny that. But it's different, right? It's different from when you're single than when you're in a relationship. You get married, you have kids, all that stuff, and it plays a part into it. So I'm going to let Marvin give some stats and some other numbers. But if you want to elaborate on the two things, because I think that's very simple. Sex and intimacy. That's it. Nothing else besides that. And what does that really mean? And is intimacy, are you equating that with sex?
Yeah, that's absolutely what I mean. I know women and men, actually define intimacy, I believe, a little bit different. Where intimacy for men and women is more of the from the cuddling aspect to the holding hands to the just being close knit. Whereas for us as men, I believe that it means that in addition to actual sex itself, we just put it all in one box as far as intimacy. We don't really separate it, but then again, we are intimate as well. So not all men are like that. Don't get me wrong, I don't speak for all men, never will. However, I think because sex to me is how we connect as men, for the most part, whereas women is mostly mental, and that's to be respected and understood. But that's why we are more visual. We have a much higher libido at times. So I believe it's very important to us. And I know a lot of women tend to think that, because it's not that high in the scale for them as far as priority, they minimize the way we feel about it, and also tend to use that reverse psychology when we bring that topic up as, is this what it's all about? We're not allowed to even address that without it being a point of contention for many women. But women, if they have an issue with it, we're supposed to listen, and so I believe there's a double standard with that as well. So, when it comes to actual intimacy, for us, it's all the above. But sex is very important to us as men, because that's how we connect.
Undoubtedly, and it's important for men and women. So we were just joined by Oliver and Denise. Marcelle, welcome, you two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Sorry we're getting on a few minutes late. Sound like we got in on a good part of the conversation, though.
We just started. so, so Oliver and Denise, they are relationship coaches, and if you all have checked out the magazine, Platinum Magazine, or if you haven't, they were featured in our magazine earlier this year, and they were talking about communication. So really solid, good couple, very real and personable, and that's why I asked them to come on. Now, I put this show together like last minute, so I truly, truly appreciate
Absolutely, it's our pleasure.
Guys coming on, and I'll tell you, I got the show together with Marvin, and early this morning, I was like, I need someone who is very articulate, that can give good perspective, and just kind of give some good advice, especially from a male perspective, and also because you two are coaches and you work with couples all the time. So I thought you were a really good couple. It came to me, I'll tell you, like early in the morning. So you got a message early in the morning. So again, I appreciate it. Good to see you guys. So, and I want to also highlight your book, Overcoming Man Laws, which I thought was a pretty good read. Let me put your information, and you can contact Oliver and Denise at denali.org and their website at the bottom. So I am sure, as relationship coaches, you get this topic a lot between couples, and that being an issue. Do you find, or maybe like kind of what is the percentage of couples that actually have an issue with the amount and frequency of sex in relationships, and how do you get them to get over that hump or to resolve it?
Percentage wise, I'd say maybe 40% of couples have some, let's call it half. I'll say 50% of couples have some kind of issue around sexual intimacy in general. And then maybe of those couples, the 50%, now this is just of who we've seen. Right. Of that 50%, I'd say maybe 30% of those, it's a desire discrepancy kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's somebody wants it more, somebody's not wanting it as much. And as a result, there's some level of resentment. Now it's not happening at all.
Yeah.
And
it's not always the man that
yeah. Surprisingly.
What we've seen is not always the man or the husband or the male partner that is resentful because they're not getting it as much as they like. A lot of times it is the woman.
Yeah. So it and as it relates to how we handle it, often it's about really getting to the core of what the issue is.
Right.
Because for some couples, it's just outright selfishness. Somebody is just not willing to even identify or commit to meeting the other person's needs. Right. Now that's a whole nother story. And so people who know us know that I'm not a mean guy, but if we're coaching you, you're going to get, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. So if you're being selfish, I'm going to tell you that that's what the issue is. Right. And then we're going to deal with how we, overcome that selfish attitude. But then there's some other things that are taking place, some conversations that haven't been had, some we've seen some things that point back to trauma.
Yeah.
That the other mate never knew.
Well, if you don't mind, may I interject? Yeah. So what is it when initially when they were dating, everything was fine, the frequency was great. Now they're married. Now all of a sudden, it's become once a week, 3 times a month. You know what I mean? To me, those explanations that one may give as to the reason why, and then you can look back at how it all began. how do there's a disconnect there when that's how I would feel if I was the actual partner, the husband, in that particular situation.
Yeah, I agree with that because that is often the case. It is
Right.
often the case where when you're dating, if you're intimate, sexually intimate before you get married, typically it's fireworks, right?
I think a lot
Right.
of times after couples get married, they, of course, a lot of other things come into play if you have children and all of that kind of stuff. And,
Mhm.
you hear a lot of times that women say that, they're taking care of small children and so they get tired and stuff like that. But
Right.
a lot of times, honestly, I think that couples just get comfortable
Yep.
and
Yep.
they feel like, well, we're married. And if I don't want to, what are you going to do? We're here. So I just don't want to. And you're going to just have to wait until I do because now
Yeah.
we're married type thing. And I think a
Exactly.
lot of times that husbands and wives, they just get comfortable in that and there's not so much of a pursuit. There's not so much of a, what's the word? Not pursuit, but there's not so much of a
Mystery.
mystery
Mhm.
and there's not so much of even dating anymore.
Mhm.
And so just couples get comfortable a lot of the
Yeah.
time.
We see that often. We
Yeah.
see that quite often where it's all of these things were happening. We were dressing a certain way.
Mhm.
We were going to certain places. We were talking to each other a certain kind of way. And all of that just like comes to a screeching halt because it's almost like, okay, I was doing all of these things to accomplish a goal. Now I've accomplished the goal. So I don't got to do it no more. And not realizing that that's the very thing that you did to accomplish the goal is the thing that you're going to need to do to maintain.
Hmm.
And
I
so
have
we work with a lot of couples in that regard.
Okay.
I would find it hard to believe that going from dating to marriage that men are kind of like, okay, well, I got what I want, so I don't have to have sex. I don't see that, and I don't know if you all see that. I could definitely see it where a woman has done that, and that would be more prevalent. Marvin,
Hmm.
what is your experience with basically being in relationships or dating? Is sex something that women have held like over your head or kind of threaten you with? Um,
Well. First of all, let me just go into defense of the ladies because sometimes there's certain things that just to piggyback on some things that they said. Lack of desire, postpartum depression, frequent marital conflict as far as arguments and things of that nature. In addition to just things that are happening within the relationship that one may not be aware of, right? So we understand that there are underlying factors that could cause that. Now, as a man who desires to have that, as far as the sexual relations or what have you, and it's very difficult to understand why is it that even though one may be tired, one may have gone through certain things from a medical standpoint, it still hurts because the rejection, it brings resentment, it brings anger, it brings frustration. I'm telling you, those are things that, and we have to suppress it because we don't want to necessarily, start a really big, conflicting argument in the household, but it's something that we hold on to, and the resentment just continues to build. So that's very important to also understand from a woman's standpoint that that's something that we take very, very seriously. And you have men that may not want to necessarily go outside the relationship and they have to take care of things themselves, which to me is unacceptable. I'm not married, guys. So from the outside looking in, it makes me really frustrated that a lot of my brothers, have to go through that. And it's not a ethnicity standpoint because white men go through it. I hear it all the time from everyone.
Mhm.
And they make even little jokes about it,
Yeah.
So to think about like getting married and that will all change makes me just really somewhat apprehensive because for me, that's a major part of a relationship. That's how we connect as men. In my opinion, that's how I feel. Otherwise, I'll be very distant, come very aloof from the entire relationship. And the thoughts that would run through my mind to go outside would be very, very prevalent. So I had a conversation with some brothers that not too long ago. It was 6 of them, great guys, great group of guys I respect, and that was, mind you, I haven't seen these guys in a long time. We just came together because they came into town. And that was the number one thing that they each had. And mind you, they didn't know I was even going to have this conversation with them. And I asked them all, about it, and they basically said that was, and I could not understand that, and that's come from a single person. So, and I get you guys, will definitely chime in on that. So I cannot fathom being in that situation. And in addition to that, there's a stat that I want to give as well, that I came onto while doing some research about this. So there are sexless marriages, right? And sexless marriages, that's defined as, anywhere between, having no sex or fewer than 10 sexual encounters per year, which is like absurd to me. So 10 to 20% of United States marriages are completely sexless. So if you're having sex, less than 10 times a year, you're considered having a sexless marriage, and to me, I think it happens often. And I think a lot of people, may not say it, but I think that's happening a lot because, and back to what you were saying as well, I want you to touch on as well. I believe, and not to, dismiss some of the things that women are going through, the children, the postpartum pregnancy, the situations within a relationship, what have you. But I believe that a lot of these women are using the marriage as leverage. I got you. You're not going anywhere. Okay. So I could do what I feel. If you have a problem with it, so what? Because these things are being ignored by a lot of these wives. They could care less that these men have this issue with the fact of they're not being intimate with their woman, and they could care less. These men having to actually do the things that a single man would do, when it comes to pornography and things of that nature, to me is ridiculous, and they don't care. So, when I hear these things, it frustrates me because I would hate to think that when I get married, this is one thing that I have to deal with, so I just wanted just to put that out there as the fact that these things that I hear often, these are things that, and this has come from the man perspective, because the women, I don't really, there's nothing that they can tell me that can make me accept, what they're going to tell me. I've heard those things with, with the kids and everything. So I want you guys to chime in. I just wanted to give you, based on the question you asked me, the experience that I've had, some things that I've heard from a lot of the fellas, and I just feel like it's unacceptable.
Yeah, what are you gonna say?
I was just going to say, in that situation, it goes back to what you were saying, babe. That is just plain selfishness.
Right.
That's the bottom line. When that is the reason why, it's just because I got you now, we married, I don't feel like it today, and so it is what it is. And sometimes you don't feel like it, and that's fine. But I think that in that, you have to have that conversation with your husband or your wife. I don't feel like it today, but let's set up maybe tomorrow. But that can't continue. Obviously, you can't keep putting it off. But if it's I just don't feel like it, I got you now, and so what you gonna do about it? We married, you ain't going nowhere, so it is what it is.
They may not say that, don't get me wrong, but to me, based on just the things that when they describe the situation, they, some of these men feel that way as well, because they're not changing. Nothing is changing with that. You know what I mean? So one may think either one is going outside, why you're no longer attracted to me, because we're human, and a lot of times we're human beings as well. I think a lot of times women, they don't really believe that we have feelings. You know what I mean? So that hurts, and like I said, it brings resentment, the rejection. That rejection piece of it is really hard to swallow. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot that goes into from a man's perspective that I don't think a lot of women understand or care to understand, because they feel like, they don't know what we're going through. So, hey, they could. So I just feel like it's just being, it's being minimized when it comes to us as men.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I believe that there's not a lot of emphasis pre-marriage put on the importance of intimacy, period. Not just sexual intimacy, but intimacy across the board. There's not a lot of emphasis put on that. So, and I'm not saying this is all single folk who are having sex, but typically when you're having sex, when you're single, often you're not thinking about the intimate components of that. Like and I'm using this word for shock value. I don't really mean this per se, but it's entertainment more than it is emotional. It's right. It's entertainment more than it is emotional connection. But then, like you said, we do have feelings. We do have these needs. We do have these desires, and they're fueled by the level of intimacy, not just sexual intimacy, but physical intimacy outside of the bedroom, spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy, experiential intimacy. All of these things feed into that, but we don't put emphasis on building those things and how important they are to each other. Like she and I had a very raw conversation where I explained to her how important sex was to me. Yeah. And that it's not me just trying to just get my rocks off at any time I feel like it. Like there is a significant component, alignment to that and this relationship. And when I explained to her, and I'll tell you to a brief piece of it. I'm a gamer, or I was a gamer. I don't have a lot of time to game now, but I gave her the analogy of playing a first-person shooter. And as you go through these missions, you may get shot at, you may get punched, you may get kicked, something may fall on you, and as a result, your level of health goes down. Mm-hmm. But as you go through these missions, you may find a box, a first aid box, and when you grab that first aid box, it gives you some more life. Mm-hmm. Now, depending on how much you've been depleted, the first box you find may fill you all the way back up. Or if you've been depleted really low, the first box only gives you a little bit and you got to find another one. And I told her, I said, that's what this is for me. Like this is a part of the thing that allows me to continue to fight in whatever way, shape, or form. Right. And I'm really paraphrasing. Like this was a long conversation we had.
Right.
But I don't feel like we have those kinds of conversations. And I don't feel like individuals really understand what they're signing up for as it relates to identifying and being intentional about consistently meeting somebody's needs in the area of intimacy building as a whole. Then the flip side of that is we have, and I'm not knocking this. Please hear me for those who are listening. That's the disclaimer. I'm not knocking this. But the other side of that coin is now because we've had such a misconstrued ideology around sex and its importance. Now it's almost taboo for you to say, as a man, I need this from you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because now it's like, oh, well, you just, this is all you want me for. And this is, and there's movements that I believe are very beneficial to the needs of women, but also now make me feel like I can't say this is a need of mine.
Exactly. And when they bring it up, we have to listen to all ears. Everything has to be wide attention, to listen to everything that issues that you may have as a woman when it comes to us, when it comes to sex. You're right. You're absolutely right. And that's what I was speaking about before you guys came on. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So what say you, Miss Oliver?
I think I agree with you, Marvin, when you said that we don't accept a lot of times, women don't accept that men have these feelings and these emotions. Because I think a lot of times women are like, well, you are this man, you're this macho person, you should be okay. I'm the one with the emotions. I'm the one that should be nurtured. I'm the one that has all of these feelings. And I think a lot of times women forget or don't even think that this happens to men, that they have these emotions as well. And I think that goes back to it being so taboo, because a lot of women look at these men and like, man, you're good. You're a man. You're macho. You got this. You're all right. We're the ones that need all of this nurturing and loving. So I agree with you.
I agree with that. We spend a lot of time with couples walking them through identifying their most important emotional needs. Mm-hmm. Because often it's just a conversation that hasn't taken place.
Yeah.
Right.
And so sometimes it's not so much that they're ignoring it as much as they just don't realize that it's even necessary.
Right.
Because we've never talked about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just realizing, okay, hey, these are the things that are important and that undergird this relationship. And it's not to say that sex, like, I don't want to put it out there because some women will say, well, what you trying to say? If you don't have sex with me, I'm gonna leave or I'm gonna do these other things. And yes, that may be a result of the frustration, but that's not the reason why I'm asking you. That's not the reason why I'm saying it's important to you. The reason why I'm saying it's important to you is it's because it aligns with one of my most important emotional needs. And anybody's most important emotional needs, if they aren't being met, typically your most important emotional needs, if they're met, you tend to fall in love with the person who meets those needs. So that's going to happen to anybody. So even if her need is not sex, if one of her most important emotional needs is affirmation or is whatever it is, name whatever it is, and I'm not meeting it, she will feel the same way as if mine is not being met. Absolutely. And we got to have those kinds of conversations so that people understand the importance of what we're doing. We're not just trying to, you know what I'm saying? We're not just trying to knock just for the sake of knocking. We're trying to, you know, get a need met that's important to
the
us.
5 love languages, basically. Yeah.
So okay, that's good stuff. So one I want to say, hey to She Love, I see you in there, and David, welcome as well. Coach Reg joined us really
Hello,
quick.
everyone.
Coach Reg, he is also a relationship expert and coach. Thanks for dropping in. I know you're going to come in, but I know you have some good stuff. What you got? You been listening to the conversation?
Yes, I have. First of all, thanks, Tamika, for letting me pop on, and it's good to be here with you all. I was listening to some of it or a little bit of it as I did, and I heard conversations. I heard, frustration. It's a lot of things that come with this part of a relationship, and Oliver, I love how you communicated it to your wife, why this is important and what's important to you and why. The analogy was awesome as well. And
Thanks.
I think you're welcome. Sorry. I just think that, relationships in total, be they marriages or dating relationships, there's a shared responsibility. And there's something else that should happen in addition to conversations, in my opinion, a little thing called agreement, right? Because we can converse about whatsoever. And, you have acknowledgement, head nodding like, yeah, I hear you. Right. I get it. But then that thing that you're asking still goes unmet. And you're like, why do I have to keep saying this when I get frustrated again? Why do I have to keep talking about this? Right. Why do we have to keep having this conversation? Because there's no agreement. Yeah. And when you don't have agreement, you're likely going to be frustrated because you're going to keep having conversations. Right. And so the idea is to understand that, like, if your need is sex, or if a man's need is sex, or if a woman's need is sex, and the man is like, whatever that disparity is, if in fact there is one, the question then is not so much, do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm sure comprehension does take place. But here's the problem. What are you willing to do? I get that your need doesn't match mine. Just give me something, right? And if you give me something, we can build on that. And it'll at least demonstrate to me that you care and you heard me, not just acknowledge me, right? So that's the start. I probably have a bit more, but yeah, we'll stop there.
The question that I have is, why is it that when you're dating, you're living separate places, things are frequent, but when you get together as a union, whether it be marriage, whether it be moving in together, things change when it comes to that frequency? What really happens? Is it the fact that you know that the person is there, you know what's going on, there's no longer the aspect of, no, maybe they be cheating, maybe they may be cheating, maybe they may be out, doing something else. So they make sure they fall in line to ensure that they address those needs. What really happens? Why that change so often in a relationship?
I have a thought. I have a thought. I think it changes can change because we take things for granted, right? We become comfortable and complacent. It's cool when we live apart because I have a chance to miss you. Now I see you every day. You see me every day. We become routine and familiar, right? Yeah. And so the idea is now we have to work harder, interestingly enough, right? This is why it's important to know who you are first and what matters to you and how you show up in relationship. It's also important to pay attention to who you're in relationship with and how they show up in relationship, right? And you hope that they're doing the same. And if that's not happening, but these are the kinds of things we talk about, right? Because oftentimes, not even intentionally and certainly not maliciously, we operate from perception, not reality, because we haven't had a conversation. We haven't asked a question to even listen to or hear what they're thinking or feeling. We take for granted because we've been with you for X amount of time that, oh, I know you, or you may feel you know me. Mm-hmm. But guess what? We may change. Our minds may change, our feelings may change. But if we never check in and ask what's different, if you notice something, instead of becoming resentful and acting out of frustration, you miss an entire step with the person that you said you wanted to share your life with, or share your relationship, or be in relationship with, right? So again, this is not just marriage. I think it's in dating as well. It's where we fall down and not remain connected, right? And something else I think we could do a better job of in relationships is creating a safe space where we can discuss those things that are difficult, those things that are hard. And we can also talk about those things and acknowledge those things that are good. Why I love you, why I'm here. I want to hear from you why you're here and why you love me, right? Mm-hmm. Not just to talk about all the things that I want to see different, all the things I want you to do, all the things you want me to do.
Right.
Now, let's discuss the things. If we both have noticed that we've fallen down in some areas where we were once more stable and strong, let's talk about that. Let's figure out where we went wrong, if you will, not wrong, where we fell down, and how we can be better.
Okay.
Yep, I love it.
Have you seen? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in this conversation, I want to know how you all feel about this. So Marvin, Coach Reg, you are both legally single. Yes. Oliver, Denise, you're married. I'm married. What are your thoughts on scheduling sex and incorporating it that way? If you find that you're always tired.
I was like, no.
Use your words with the. What are your
I let the married couple go first.
Marvin was like negative.
Spontaneity is the spice of life. But go ahead.
Spontaneity is absolutely the spice of life. Yeah. However, I feel like if it's not happening and there are these excuses as to I'm tired, I've been with the kids all day, and if your scheduling is off, there was a time where Ollie worked nights. And so he'd be coming in the mornings when I was leaving to go to work. And so we had to schedule it. We had to be like, look, you leaving, I'm coming. We got to figure out when is the best time to make this happen. I feel like, yes, spontaneity is the spice of life. But if you need to schedule it, if that's what it's going to take for it to happen, I'm all for it.
Now, let me say this, though, right, as it relates to scheduling. We're not just talking about like
putting it on a calendar. No,
right,
it's not just that.
Right. We're not just talking about like you got a meeting at 3:00. Like that's to me, I'm not with that either. But sometimes there comes a point in your relationship where I think there should be a healthy balance between you scheduling in the way of making it a priority and still allowing room for spontaneity. Right. Absolutely. So, for example, we have a date night every week, which we try to keep to. Sometimes we don't, we don't. But the scheduling piece, what it does is create some level of anticipation. Right. Like we're going to go out Thursday night. We're going to do this. We're going to have this fun. We're going to whatever. And we know that at the end of that experience or part of that experience includes sex. Or the beginning of that experience. Right. Includes sex. And so that gives you some level of, I can't wait. So I'm sitting in the meeting, can't hardly pay attention because I'm like, man, it's Thursday. I'm trying to get out of here, Doc. Like, hurry up and say what you got to say, fam, so I can go. And so that kind of thing, I think, is beneficial to just the intimacy building piece. But I'm not just talking about, oh, man, I got to do this again. All right, here we go. What time we got? 4:00? All right, I'll see you at 4. No, not at all.
Yeah. In full disclosure, for me, about a year or so ago, I felt that in my marriage, I felt like, and I knew we weren't being as intimate as we used to be. And, I had 2 young kids, right now 4 and 2, then 3 and 1 or whatever it was. And it was hard. I'm a morning person. My husband's a night person. When the kids went down, I was out with them. But that is when we instituted a date night every Thursday. And you're right, it comes with the anticipation. But back in the day, I would have said like scheduling sex, that's crazy. That's crazy. Right. But we did for a minute. It was a couple, if nothing else, it doesn't mean you don't do anything on other days of the week, but if nothing else, these are the days. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So until that didn't last that long, but as far as scheduling, but it was a conscious effort and we still do our date nights but you have to be conscious about it. Because it will go to the wayside with just work and being busy and kids and dreams and passion, like all of that. It'll go to the wayside. So
yeah,
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
yeah. So are you saying that if you have a date night once a week, that you're looking at, 52 times a year, opposed to, and for you, sir, Mr. Oliver, that I guess that becomes acceptable because, it's better than zero.
Well, no, I'm not saying it's going to be 52 times a year because I believe there should be if you have to schedule, quote unquote, I don't believe that negates spontaneity.
Okay, gotcha.
There has to be a healthy balance between the two.
Yeah.
And typically what people will notice, and I tell couples this all the time, as you begin to build intimacy, you begin to crave intimacy. So as you begin to build intimacy, you're actually going to want to look for ways to sneak one in between a meeting, or you're going to want to look for ways to do different things because you're building the foundational level of intimacy that's required for you to want to feel that. For us, just like with Tamika, there was a time in our lives where we took that scheduling piece as a means of continuing to fuel our anticipation for each other. Because if not, I'd be coming in, she'd be going out, and we'd just be doing that forever because we couldn't find no time to do anything else. Yeah. And that's why we instituted that. But I believe there should be a healthy balance, if you do have to schedule, a healthy balance between that and spontaneity, because there's no couple that sits in front of me that can convince me that they don't never have no time.
Right.
You can't convince me of that.
Absolutely.
I don't care what you're doing.
Right.
You're the president of the United States.
Correct.
Everybody got some time. Like you can't convince me of that. So,
okay. If I could offer as well, I'm not married, like Tamika said. So, but I do hear this, and I think in addition to scheduling to some sounds rigid, right? But I think what we also can add to that is flexibility, right? Like you guys talked about a bit ago. There's some times where we couldn't. You may have plans to do something. You're like, I can't because say you get delayed at work and you get, and you miss each other in that morning where you're heading out the door and he's coming home, right? But you scheduled it, but you're like, damn, we couldn't get this in today. That anticipation doesn't go anywhere. We just shift it. It's floating, right? It's like a moving target. It's going to happen. It just didn't happen when we thought it was. It's kind of like a goal, right? You know what you're aiming for, but if you don't hit it, you simply reset it. It's the same thing as scheduling, and particularly with couples who have challenging schedules, small children, competing schedules, or what have you. Those things matter. Now, to Marvin's point, I ain't mad at him. I'm a single man, so I'm gonna leave it there.
I get it, bro.
I would say this to all the women that are listening to this. It's very difficult for us to, as men that's going through the situation, for you to convince us that you're still attracted to us. That's a hard pill to swallow. You're not turned on by us anymore. You're no longer attracted to us. So our mind, the wheel starts spinning like, what's really going on? You know what I mean? What's going on outside of this situation? Whereas, we used to be this way at once, and now all of a sudden it's no longer. Things have changed, exponentially. So that from an ego standpoint hits hard as well.
Yeah.
So
I agree, because we want to be wanted.
Exactly.
And sometimes the women in our lives don't realize that that's a need, because like you said earlier, like you kind of expect this provider, priest, protector, conqueror, warrior, right? And me having this feeling of, I want you to find me attractive. I want you to look at me when I come out the shower and be like, hey, okay, you can get this. They don't associate protector, priest, provider, warrior, conqueror with that. So when we say that, they kind of dismiss it maybe. But that is part of who we are. And it's funny you would say that. Or it's not funny, but it's actually spot on that you would say that, because in the work that I do with men, that's a big thing, that it's tough to get people, men, to really open up to do that sometimes, because they've been so used to suppressing that they don't open up to anybody, but they will find avenues to feed that need.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Absolutely.
and whatever it is, you use your imagination, whatever it is. It may not always be something crazy negative, but there's going to be something that, like, man, I need to fulfill that need. So if it's like, you know, the person at the gig saying, "Oh man, that's a nice suit you got on today," at least that helps for today. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like whatever it is, right? So that's important to understand, and that kind of goes back to what Coach Reg was saying. You got to have the conversations about this. Those things have to be identified, and then you have to agree. We did this thing going back to the 5 emotional needs. We did this physical exercise years ago where we had to identify that, and then we had to share it with each other and have some real in-depth conversation. Like I say, okay, number 3, what does that mean? Like, what does that look like? Like, give me some specifics. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? And then had to make, at the end of that, make a commitment. Going back to what you said, Coach Reg, an agreement. We have to make a commitment that we are going to be intentional about meeting the needs that were presented for each other. That was a game changer in our relationship.
Absolutely.
The good thing about that, right, is, and I think this is it's a struggle, because many of us have been, we've had relationships. Some of us have been married. Some of us are married. And we fall into habits. Those habits don't always serve us. So we have to say, okay, how do I develop new habits, right? Having a conversation with someone to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I want to know what you're feeling. I want, we talk about that safe space where each of us can hear and be heard. And not just to talk about the things we want to see different, or but to also acknowledge the good things. I think that is a new habit, because most of us aren't doing that, weren't taught that, don't know to do that. We just know how to be frustrated, don't know how to communicate our frustrations or articulate them, and expect the hearer to not be offended. Because most people I work with, and I hear this with men and women, they talk about communication. We should have communicated more. My question is, about what? Because if you say, you have to have specificity, because what I need to communicate about or want to, or what you need to, may not be the same. So we individually have to sit with what it is that is our challenge or our frustration, or we have heartburn around, and then learn how to articulate that to your person, and hopefully they can hear you. Mm-hmm. Now, I coach around the components of emotional intelligence, EQ. So this is huge in my practice and my brand, because I think if you get that right, the 5 love languages, the 5 emotional needs, all those things, that's going to be accentuated, because the EQ part is what we miss. We don't understand the self-awareness. We don't understand how we're being received. We don't necessarily know how to manage what we are aware of. We don't understand social management, social cues, and we don't understand relationship management. So there are components here. And I think if individually we can understand those, we can begin to create and develop new habits undergirded with agreement, which is going to strengthen and sustain the relationship you said you wanted in the first.
Right. And just to touch on those 5 love languages, for those that may not know what they are, it's acts of service, words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, and gifts.
Yep.
All right. Simple as that. Yeah.
I thank you guys for continuing this conversation, because my electricity straight went out. Wow. Like, I lost everything. I don't know where I went. And so I don't even know some of the things y'all been talking about for the past 10 minutes. But I appreciate the conversation going on. What I want to know is, when you're talking to couples, can you give some suggestions, especially for people who are watching, how to become more intimate? And I say that because as we get older, it's going to shift, meaning at some point, men are no longer going to be able to perform. Mm-hmm. And he's going to need some support in that area. It means this is a part of life, and it happens. And then as women get older, our desire increases. And so what things can you suggest to people now to be able to connect and to be intimate now? So when those moments come, they can still be satisfied in an intimate way if it's not sexual.
Yeah, I think that you always there was a connection, right? When you first got together with your partner, there was a connection. I think always keep that in mind. What was the spark then? try to keep that in mind. Like sometimes it falls off, and so then you got to bring back to your memory, man, what was it? What were we doing? Like how were we so passionate in the beginning? What was that? I think is super important to keep that in mind and always have a conversation like I'm not, I just can't do this. I can't perform like, and then if that was what you were to say to me, then I would have to have a conversation like what can I do? What do you like? What is it that we can do that will satisfy you?
And I think it'll be easier to have that conversation if you are over the course, the trajectory of your relationship, you are actually actively building intimacy outside of the bedroom. So if there is affection that is taking place, if the love language is being spoken, if the needs are being met, if you are recognizing the bids for connection and you are meeting those and you're growing this bond that just connects you in a way that causes you to just want to love on this person, you're going to already feel some of the things that you need to feel in the way of endorphins and the love hormones. You're going to feel some of that just because you're consistently meeting those bids for connection. Yeah. Then it's about getting creative, because if intercourse goes away, then now we got to talk about what are the other things that help to supplement the stuff that I'm already getting from meeting these bids for connection and from really being intentional about growing intimacy outside of the bedroom. That combination keeps you going, right? Because it may be now that you incorporate some electronic device, or it may be that you are using your hands as opposed to something else. It could be anything, but what undergirds that experience is being intentional about creating intimacy outside of the bedroom that helps to fuel your love and connection and bond.
Coach Reg, thoughts?
No, I mean, I have nothing to add. That is spot on. I think because Oliver, are you Coach Oliver? Is that
yes,
correct? Or got you? So Coach Oliver, he hit it. Is that the bedroom should be in essence the culmination of all the good that occurs outside of it, right? And if you get that right, when you can't do it because physiologically, we may not be able to perform or do the things we once did because we all season, we all get older. Our bodies don't perform as they once did. What are you left with? If all you had was swinging from the chandeliers, good luck, because that's not sustainable at all. So you have to have something more substantive to maintain and strengthen your relationship. So yeah, I not much to add there. Well said.
I just want to know from your professional opinions. I know we all know about love languages, but do you find in your practice and in coaching clients that couples are aware, or individuals are aware of the love languages and what theirs are and what their partners are and what needs to be met?
Some couples do know and some couples are aware. And then there are some couples who they're not speaking their spouses or partners' love language, and they're loving their spouse the way they like to be loved. And so that makes it difficult. Like if Ollie was to, I don't know, give me words of affirmation, that's not my love language. And so he can say all of this stuff to me because that's his love language. But because it's not mine, it doesn't make me feel that loved. And so we do see a lot of times where they're just not speaking their spouse's love language, and they're speaking what they feel like their spouse should want to hear, or whatever the love language is. But sometimes they do get it spot on. Sometimes they don't. And we have to coach them through what it is and how to go about meeting it.
Mm-hmm.
And Marvin, you being single, you mentioned it. Do you even have those conversations with women that you're dating?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the first conversations I like to have, to understand what it is that they need. What is it that gets them to the point where I feel satisfied, because as I said before, the actual physical connection to me, means a lot. So whatever I need to do to ensure that I get that response, I will try to make sure that I understand exactly the things that they love, the things that they need to be addressed for them to actually be turned on, if you will, in every way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I don't think they really understand. Some of the times, I don't think they really understand the question, because when I even break it down to them, and they're trying to come up with something, you can tell they're trying to come up with something to actually respond with. Some don't really know. That's another thing, guys. Some of them don't really know what their love languages are.
So I'm sorry, please.
No, I was just going to add to that and say that the 5 love languages are love languages, but that's not all.
Right.
Those may not do anything. Those 5 may not do anything for you. But what it is, like you were saying, Marvin, some people don't know at all.
Right.
But, that's where the conversation comes in. Well, what do you like? And
exactly.
What do you appreciate? Because it may not be any of those 5. Those are 5 and they're great, but those are not the end all be all.
Exactly. I agree.
Coach Reg, did you have something?
Yeah, just to add on to that the idea of this exercise and getting to know someone is not necessarily. I love what Coach Denise said, not just to stop at the language. It's really to get to know that person. Again, we're talking about a deeper level, which is the emotional intelligence part of it, where you are seeing who this person is and listening to and allowing their responses to inform how you respond and how you react to them. Right.
Yeah.
It's not to say, okay, they said this must be what it is. Part of this exercise is paying attention to what isn't said, right? What kinds of things make them light up? What kinds of things do you notice about them that they may seem triggered by? They may seem angered or frustrated by. Not anything you may have done, just something you observed. And you can ask questions based on what you observed, not just because I think sometimes we try to sound impressive or we try to seem, I ask her this question. I'm asking this question.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, stop the pretense, people. Just have a conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
Who are you? Do you even know? Right. Mm-hmm. What have you learned in your dating experiences? What have you learned if you're divorced? What have you learned about your relationships? More than that, what have you learned about you?
Mm.
That's going to help me help you. But I can't coach a lie. I can coach a truth, but not your lie.
Yeah.
Listen, bro, we say that so often. because even in crisis, sometimes couples will come to us saying what they think we want to hear.
Right.
Like, fam, we can't help you.
Facts.
Like, there's got to be some level of honesty that you bring to this process, or you return the same way you came.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And that's not on us. Like, we're not
100%.
magicians. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't wave a magic wand and just be like, oh, you know what? You're lying. No. You just got to tell me the truth from jump, fam.
Indeed. And Marvin, back to your point, sir, when you said that you ask questions and sometimes they don't know. Mm-hmm. The thing about questions that most people don't consider is sometimes you literally have to sit with your response because you don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. Right. You can always revisit stuff. It doesn't have to be answered real time in the moment. You can say, you know what, that's a great question. I got to spend some time on it. Man, you got a lot of good questions. Now, I'm not saying make it like an interrogation like you're writing a book. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
But you want to ask questions because what you're paying attention to is not just their answer, but if they are aware of themselves, do they know what matters? Do they know why? Right. And if they don't, are they willing to be honest enough, transparent enough with you, not necessarily guarded, just to say, you know what, I'm confident within myself to say, you know what, I don't have that answer, but I dig your question. Tell you what, I'm going to get back to you on that because no one's ever asked me that before.
Yeah, right.
Now, don't go patting yourself on the back because she might hit you with one too. Right. that you can't answer real time.
Right.
That's why this isn't a competition. It's really an exercise. And do I really want to get to know this person and ascertain if this is someone I want to invest effort, time, and energy with? Okay. Hopefully they are assessing you in the same fashion. If they're not, that's a problem. So it's definitely worthwhile. But again, it's really more around individuals being aware of themselves and learning how to manage what they're aware of and being honest with a question or about an answer. If they don't have it, it's okay. I don't have that answer, but I'm going to sit with it. Okay. So I think it's important to do that.
Yeah.
That is important because what it does, right? Because sometimes we sometimes have the privilege of sitting with singles as well. And the thing about it is that I love what you said, Coach Reg, because you don't have to have an answer. What you have to have is you have to have the willingness to be open to the process.
Absolutely.
So if you're open to learning, if you're open to growing, if you're open to self-discovery, if you're open to self-actualization, if you're open to criticism, if you're open to suggestions, you're going to grow. And then that conversation, the result is a conversation that is wholesome, that is very honest, that is full of self-discovery, and that allows the recipient to make some decisions. Okay, yeah, okay, I see where like he or she is trying to, okay, we're trying to do this. All right, let's see where we go. Or you like, oh nah, fam, I dodged a bullet with that one.
For sure. There's the thing. So it's a couple things, right? That you know, the answer is the answer. That's the other part, because when you're getting to know someone, and so this, in my estimation, this occurs when you're getting to know someone and when you're well established, i.e., a marriage or a long-term relationship, and that is getting to know that person. You're data gathering, information gathering, right? Because again, what you learn today may be true. It's like a fact. Like today, say the sun was shining where you live. That's a fact. That does not mean the truth is the sun shines every day.
Right.
It's just in that moment. So the fact of this moment is, this is how I felt. This is how I thought about it. Now I have new information. I can make a different choice, different decision. But absent of a conversation, you're left with assumption and perception and likely ruin, because you're going to move in that space of what you think you know, not based on what you actually know, because there was no conversation to support your assumption.
Good.
So it's a deeper, more intentional, purposeful, focused exercise in getting to know, again, allowing what you learn to inform your responses or your reaction. And sometimes just to take notes, mental notes, and then ask yourself, if what I saw today, if what I heard today from this person, quite frankly, can I live with that? Am I willing to accept that? Because that comes with that person. That's not going to change just because we have a conversation and we have an agreement. No, that's who they are. And if you aren't willing to accept that, be honest with yourself and them and say, hey, you know what? You're a wonderful person, but I just don't know. I got some questions. Right. And I don't know if this is a good move for us, but it's the honesty, it's the courage of your conviction, it's the courage to be honest. And I hope that imposter syndrome doesn't prevent that from happening with folks who are listening. You know, be the best you can be, go be great. But the only way you do that is with being honest first.
So Coach Reg went into coach mode.
I did.
Yeah, absolutely. No, hey, listen, that's great.
If you want to schedule a session with him, his website down at the bottom is rucoach.com. Real quick, because we're got to wrap it up. You want to tell the listeners about your book that you have coming out, or that was just released?
Me or
yes?
Oh yes. Thank you, Tamika. Yes. My book was just released. Very excited about this project. I said I coach around the components of emotional intelligence. And the title of the book is Love, Relationships, and Sometimes Just Letting Go. And I think it's really going to help some people. It's not my opinion. It's not advice. It really is, again, around the components of emotional intelligence, how they serve and support you in your relationships, your life, and your love. And it's not just for romantic relationships, it's in any relationship. Although the book is focused on romantic relationships, interpersonal relationships, the principles that we discuss in there support no matter the type of relationship. So super excited about this project. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and my publisher, Arthur House. And Tamika, I can get you those links. Or you can go to my website. You can go right there to my website, rucoach.com, and you can see exactly where to get your copy. I highly encourage you to get it. It's a phenomenal read. I'm not saying it because I wrote it, but it is a good work because it's going to bless some folks. It's going to help some people in their relationships if that's indeed what they desire. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.
Marvin, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I did. I had a question. What advice, just to wrap it up, what advice would you guys give as professional coaches to the men and women that are going through these sexless situations, these marriages? I know you gave it through the entire conversation, but what would be the last word of wisdom, just from a motivational standpoint, where one may feel like they're ready to go the separate ways or make these decisions? What would you guys say to these people that are dealing with the situation? Because I really feel for my brothers that's dealing with this. I think it's absurd and unacceptable, but that's just me. Go ahead.
Coach Oliver, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'll, and this probably needs to be unpacked, but I won't. But I'll say this: often I have couples start with something that they can easily digest. So if we talk about building intimacy outside the bedroom, sometimes that feels tedious and mechanical, depending on what they need to work on. I have them start creating experiences.
Yeah.
Experiences, they only two requirements: put you in the same place, give you a common goal. Could be anything as simple as cooking a meal together or all the way up, right? Start creating experiences that allow you the opportunity to grow your level of intimacy. Because as you create those experiences, you begin to do some other things that begin to grow your level of intimacy in other areas. You start talking more, you start laughing more, you start hanging out more, you start, seeing the world different, you start seeing each other different, and then you can begin to build from there. So I'd say the starting point: start creating some experiences.
I think that's great. I would also say, add to that, remember what drew you to the person.
Yes.
You know, what drew them to you? Did that get lost? Did we lose that? There's this line in the movie Drumline. And I don't know if you guys, I'm sure everyone's seen that movie or heard of it anyway. But there's this line, and I don't know the character's name, but basically the drumline leader, his the guy that does this in front, the guy that runs the band, right?
Mm-hmm.
He told him, he says, "Do you know why I chose you to be the head of the drum line?" And he says, "Well, because I cared more about the team's sound than my own," right? And then this kid comes in, I think Nick Cannon's character comes in, and he's a superstar rock star, and he's focused on him, envious of him, blah, blah, blah. And so when his drum major is telling him, he says, "Listen," he says, "I chose you for that reason." He says, "But you lost sight of that." And he said, "That's okay, because we all lose sight of things sometimes. We just have to be reminded." Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in relationship, it's no different. Sometimes we just have to be reminded, because we can easily settle into subtlety and routine and familiarity. It breeds contempt, which is why we struggle. Right. So we really have to make an effort, or try to make an effort, or remember to make an effort, and quietly a gentle reminder. "Babe, how do you think we're doing right now? I feel like we're slipping on some things. I just like us to talk about it.
Right.
I got some thoughts on it. I kind of want to share mine, and I would love to hear yours." Right. It's inclusive, not we need to talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's how we relate. It's how we interact. We can be better. That's the short of it.
And Ms. Denise, from a female perspective, for the women out there that are holding out and they feel like, they have leverage and they don't need to change, what would you say to them?
You got to let go of that. You have to let go of that. I don't need to change, because here's the thing too, with they don't need to change. We always change. We went into it. When we were getting married, we went into the relationship, and before we got married, he said to me, "I don't want you to change, because I ain't never gonna change." And I'm thinking, okay. And that's the thing. We're always changing. We're always evolving. And so I think you have to let go of that. And you have to make sure that you're being open and honest. There may be things that we as women, we're not talking to our spouses or partners about. Maybe the environment, we don't feel safe. And I just think it's super important to remain open and to consider your partner's needs. Sometimes, most of the time, before your own, because when you do that, you consider your partner's needs before your own, then your partner will start doing the same thing for you as well. And then you have this whole cyclical thing going on where both of you are meeting each other's needs. So be open and let go of that. I'm not going to change.
Yeah. Because you can
And I
either
think those check-ins are really important in your relationship. I know for me, periodically, I'll just, me and my husband will be laying down in the bed. I may just like rubbing his head. Like, "Hey, is there anything you need me to change? Is there anything that you have any concerns about, any questions, anything that you see of concern?"
Absolutely.
And then in turn, it's a conversation, and he'll ask the same thing.
Yep.
I usually have something but I give him the opportunity to say his first.
Absolutely.
But it's a way, just kind of relaxing. And, usually when we both get that out, we're closer for it. And then we are intimate. And then, it's usually one of our better experiences when we have those conversations are in our conscious of it.
Yeah.
it is crucial.
It is crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crucial. Listen, you can either be selfish or you can have a successful relationship. You can't have both.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got to wrap this thing up. Thank you guys for coming. It's a great conversation. We could talk about it some more. I could have gotten some points in, but I didn't. I will another time because I know you all will be back. David Kennedy, a couple comments. Schedule. He said in his Allen Iverson voice. I don't know what that means. Allen Iverson voice. Maybe you do.
Oh, yeah, he's talking about practice. Like, I think Allen Iverson back in the day was like, we're talking about, he was at a press conference. He's like, practice? We talking about practice? I wreck shop out there. I don't need to practice here, but anyway.
Oh, okay. Not really.
I got one last thing. Have you seen the couples that are dealing with this situation? What percentage change for the better? Because I wonder sometimes, does it ever change? There's
It changes. Now I'd have to think about percentage. I'd have to go back and look at at the folks that we've dealt with. But here's the kicker. For the couples that it does change, the couples that it changes for are the couples who really dig into intimacy building outside of the bedroom.
Yeah.
That's the couples that it changes for. Because what happens is, and it's hard to do, because you have to, for a little bit, I'm not saying for the whole time, but for a little bit, you have to take the focus off of sex itself.
Yes.
Right.
Because we already feel some kind of way about each other. We're resenting the fact that sex is not happening. For a moment, we have to just set that down for a second. We're going to come right back to it. Let's come over here and let's build a foundation. Sex is the roof of the house. I'm not a builder, but I've never seen anybody build a house from the roof down. So if the roof is the problem and it's just out there floating in space, let's build something that we can attach it to.
Absolutely.
And the couples who really work through doing that, those are the couples we see a change in.
Okay, I had someone in the background, sorry, who was waiting backstage. Shisha, I have you on. Did you have a question or comment before we go? She asked in the comments to include all the names of the coaches. Shisha, are you there? No.
She's on mute. Make sure you're on mute, Shisha. She has nothing to say.
No. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm so slow. I couldn't find the right screen. I apologize for not being able to turn on my camera. You all wouldn't want to see me in my current state. But I just wanted to, I'm unable to see the names. I don't know if there's a way to, I just see Coach Reg. But you all offered some really, really good advice, and I'd like to be able to contact any or all of you all in the future if I'd like to schedule a session or something like that. So I thought maybe I wasn't the only one who might feel that way and wanted to know if you all could share your contact information.
Okay, so it is scrolling at the bottom, but I'll also put it in the notes in the description of the videos, so you can go back to YouTube and view it, and it'll be there.
Oh, well. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed listening to you all.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, so that about does it. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Good stuff. Again, I will leave your information in the notes. Join us next week, same time, same place, Wednesday, 8:00 Eastern Standard Time. And we will see you guys later. Thanks again for coming.
Pleasure to meet you all, guys.
Yes,
Really
absolutely.
Take care,
Thank
guys.
you for
Have a good
having us.
night.